So, it's been discovered that 343 has used fan assets and specifically one fan-made ship design in Halo Infinite. How did they respond and what does it mean? That's what we'll be talking about today. So, as most of you know, Halo Infinite's multiplayer dropped early, and one thing that people thought was really cool, including myself, was the presence of large capital ships in several of the big team battle maps, specifically High Power and Deadlock. Now, I took a look at these ships in detail in a prior video, which I'll link above. I analyzed the make and model of both the UNSC frigate and the Covenant capital ship, and it's actually the latter which we will be discussing today. So, this Covenant capital ship clearly looks like a standard CAS carrier, i.e. the standard carrier that you see in most of the Halo games. Specifically, it looks most like a Carol type pattern, and that's because it's got the energy projector on the nose rather than the belly. However, a lot of people pointed out that this was in fact different than most Covenant carriers we see, and specifically that it actually looks like a model of a ship made by the guys over at Sins of the Prophets. Now, I must disclose, I actually do have somewhat of a relationship with Sins of the Prophets. I've known Kraken, who was one of the lead devs, for a very, very long time, and just generally I'm a fan of the mod, which for those who don't know is a conversion mod for Sins of a Solar Empire. It's basically Halo space battles. It's super cool. I've covered it on X2 and I'll include the link down below. Anyway, Kraken put out a video explaining the situation. He showed fairly definitively, I mean, I was already convinced just based on my own examination when it was put in front of me, that this is in fact their model, but also, and this is important, that they're not upset, they definitely don't want it removed, and that they're happy to see that it's there. I'll come back to this later because I do think it's important, and I do think that 343 actually did completely the right thing in this situation. It's something that Star Wars could definitely learn from. We'll talk about that in a bit. However, how do we know it's the same? Well, the Sins of the Prophet ship has some unique fan-designed features, including the armor at the front, and interestingly, it seems like the way that 343 got a hold of this ship is the same way that we usually see things like this happen when it comes to Star Wars comic books. The model was available online, and it can be freely rotated, and this isn't actually a 3D asset in the game. It seems to just be a part of the skybox, so most likely the artist or whoever was working on the skybox simply rotated the ship in a way that was perfect for the scene. Then they probably just took a screenshot, then they obscured parts of it with a cloud, and that's where you have it. I've seen this a million times. It can even be kind of funny on occasion. There was once where a Star Wars comic book artist accidentally traced the pegs that the models they were copying were sitting on. This is a bit of a weird one for me though. We know that Halo must have a ton of really high quality CAS carrier renders or assets sitting around. It's my guess that this ship probably doesn't actually appear in the single player game and that it was just a late addition to the multiplayer. But we also know that 343 has worked with Sins of the Prophets in the past and is working with them. For example, the team will be contributing to the 2022 encyclopedia. Kraken says as much in his video. The two things they want are, one, for the artist to be credited. The artist's name, by the way, is Jared Harris, and if you go on his Twitter, which I'll link down below as well, it's Malcontent1692, you can see that he's very excited about being featured in Halo Infinite, but also that there should be more open communication between the Sins of the Prophets team and 343. Kraken said if they wanted the asset, they didn't have to screenshot the model page. They could have just had it and done whatever they wanted with it. Okay, so that's the background. Let's talk about what happened today. The resolution is pretty much the perfect one. Unlike Lucasfilm, which just ignores this happening time and time again, 343 investigated, they acknowledged it, and now Jared will be getting his name in the credits for Halo Infinite. It does seem like it would only be the Halo Waypoint version. It is what it is, but still, that's awesome. That's more than you usually see, whether from Star Wars or the other companies that do this. And it also shows typically how little artists actually want in cases like this. Now, I don't want to speak for everyone, but Jared seems happy to be recognized. No one tried a massive campaign to take 343 down or anything like that, but 343 also recognized that what they did was wrong when they've got a million other things going on right now, apologized, and did what they could to make it better. So when you look into the sky on Recharge and you see the mighty Covenant capital ship repelling the puny Mac of the UNSC, you'll now know This is Sins of the Prophets and Jared's design, which according to Uni, by the way, they called the Esgem, my pronunciation at the best of times gets criticism, pattern assault carrier. And he says, it's the armored version you see in Halo Reach's cutscene following the destruction of the super carrier. Anyway guys, that's really all I have for you today. This is a good example of how to treat your fan artist properly. I mean, ideally stuff like this doesn't happen, but you know, we're talking about rushed games and passionate fans. Microsoft, for the record, does seem to be really good about letting fans do things with their IP. And also, way back in 2019, I talked about Calamity Sci-Fi. He had a similar situation with Halo, where they actually reached out beforehand and asked whether they could use one of his ship designs for a comic, which is awesome. So this is a positive story, and I don't want to make it too negative, but again, Star Wars, you could do so much better. You could do this. There are way more Star Wars ship designers than there are Halo ship designers. You're using their stuff way more frequently. There's a ton of talent. Why not incorporate it officially sometimes, whenever possible? Throw the fans a bone. That's really all they want in my experience. I've never met one situation, literally not one, where a fan has tried to get money for their work or anything other than just their name in the credits. But until next time guys, have a good one, be safe, and may the Force be with you.